Okay, we are up to Shishi, the sixth aliyah in Parsha Shoftim. There are two main topics within this aliyah as well. The first one having to do with the laws of Edim Zomin, which are individuals who testify falsely, but really they completely fabricate, they completely make up a story about somebody else, and we prove them to be Edim Zomin because of the fact that we identified the fact through testimony of others that they weren't even there. They weren't even there. So it's not like, I change the facts a little bit or I exaggerate a little bit. I wasn't even there, and yet here I am testifying that somebody else did something else. They borrowed money, they didn't pay back, or even worse than that, committed some sort of capital offense. And the Torah says, what is the punishment? Vasisim lo kasher zaman. We do to these witnesses exactly as they conspired to do when they testified against someone else. I mean, it's the ultimate mida keneged mida, because if they testified somebody else owes money, then we find them to be Edim Zomin, they're going to pay money. If we testified somebody else did something with a chayv malkus, we're going to give them malkus. Chayv misa, we're going to give them misa. The idea is you were evil enough to conspire in such a way that could have caused tremendous damage or death to another person. Well, the Torah says we're going to do the same to you. What's really interesting about this is that the Torah says "Vasisim lo kasher zamam," and as Rashi Maseches Makos tells us, this means kasher zamam v'lo kasher asa. That, I believe, is not a drasha that we find explicitly in Chazal. The concept is from Chazal. Chazal tell us hargo in their rugin, but the drush of kasher zamam v'lo kasher asa, as they conspired and not as they did, tells us that if they actually succeeded in their evil conspiracy, their evil plot, we don't punish them in this way, which is completely illogical on the surface. The Ramban in this week's parsha, in Parsha Shoftim, tells us that the reason we don't throw the book at them quite in the same way is because it's almost an assumption that this was the fact that Bezdin carried out a misa in this particular case, that this was a reflection of the divine will, even though it was carried out in a way that was obviously completely unjustified. The second section of this aliyah has to do with the laws of war, not every aspect of war, but specifically the fact that when the nation goes out to a war, and this is a mechamis rushus, not a mechamis mitzvah, there are certain individuals who would be exempt from having to participate. And the Torah lists the different categories of individuals: people who had just got married, and people who just built a house and planted a vineyard. And then, as sort of a more general, broad category, somebody who's afraid. Somebody who's afraid to join his brothers out in war. And Chazal tell us the reason he would be afraid is because he knows he has sins for which he has not repented, he hasn't done tshuva, and he's concerned that he is a tremendous liability, not only to himself, but to the others who are depending on him. And so therefore, he wants to opt out. And the Torah, interestingly, gives this individual a pass. There's so much more to discuss here, but again, I'm working within the time frame that I've been allotted. So that hopefully is a meaningful summary of the sixth aliyah of Parsha Shoftim.